Three, two, one, here we go. Hello and welcome to the Avanti Entrepreneur Podcast. I am David Mamano, your host, and we are here to help entrepreneurial achievers and business owners and leaders move forward, because that's what Avanti means, move forward so that they can reach their full potential. I do this by interviewing the nation's best business movers and shakers. Today, I have on the show a friend and incredible serial entrepreneur, David Hauser. David, welcome to the show.
Thanks for having me.
So David, you are kind of a big deal. And I could say that because I knew you when you've always been a big deal to your mother, but when you were just a regular guy, right? So I'm really excited about this, David. So let me give the Avanti family here some context of how we met. I believe it was a cold fall day. No, was it 2006? You were in EO. I'm in EO. I think you were in EO Boston. Is that right?
Yeah, that's right.
EO is, for those of you that don't know, Entrepreneurs Organization. I was in EO Western New York, which is comprised of Buffalo, Rochester. They have a program which used to be called Birthing of Giants. They changed it to EMP, the Entrepreneurial Master's Program at MIT. Makes us sound really smart. I don't have my master's from MIT. I don't know if you, David, but when people see that, they're like, oh, you got your master's. I'm like, no, it's a master's program. But it was a really great program. It was 3 years. 5 days each year at MIT, and they described it as really, and I love this phrase and I use it all the time now, drinking from the fire hose, right? It was just pounding of great speakers, like really famous entrepreneurs, professors, a lot of great. Cameron Harold was in our class as a student and a speaker, right? So, but I had the good fortune of sitting next to you. I had no idea who you were. We met, and you were this guy that just started this company called Grasshopper. And I remember I told him, like, I'm a non-tech guy, right? Like listen, at the end of the day, I'm a salesman, right? And you started telling me about what Grasshopper does. And I really do remember this. I remember, like, I had no idea what the freak you were talking about. I'm like, okay, that sounds great, and then, years later, I'm a customer now, right? So, and I think many people have heard of Grasshopper and the entrepreneur's phone system, you labeled it, right? Yeah. And so it turned out to be a great company. Basically, it was a, what's the best way to describe it? VoIP system?
Yeah, so it was a virtual phone system for entrepreneurs. So press 1 for sales, 2 for support, on hold music, transferring, all that, just totally virtual.
Yeah. It made it for those calling, it made it sound like there's a switchboard and people and blah, blah, blah. But, for me, when I get a call to my business on my cell phone, I know it's not a personal call. It does say the name of my company. So I know it's and I know you sold that company. I do have your bio here, so we'll go over that. So you founded Grasshopper. You bootstrapped it to $30 million, right? Acquired by Citrix. So that was a great first score. Then you started a company called Chargeify, secured a Mark Cuban investment, no slacker there. And then that was acquired by ScaleWorks. And then you founded another company called Return Path, raised from, I got to get my readers for this one. Is it Flatrion? Flatrion Partners?
Flatiron and Union Square Venture.
Oh, Flatiron. Yeah, okay. I have my readers on now. Flatiron Partners, management team secured. You're a founding member of National Entrepreneurs Day, and you're an angel investor in Intercom, Unbounce, which I have used, Munchery, Groove, and more. And you do a lot of public speaking around the country. And last but not least, and for those of you watching this podcast, David just wrote a great book called Unstoppable. 4 steps to transform your life. And David, I'm not just saying this to be nice to you because you're a friend and kiss your butt. This literally is one of the top 5 books I ever read. I mean, it is, you know why? It's because it's just not things that are kind of, inspirational. Definitely is inspirational, but it's inspirational, yet you're giving like really great, tangible takeaways, nuggets that we can implement in our life. With every page almost, right? And I started getting a little overwhelmed of like thinking I'm going to do all these things at once. But, I little by little, like I've really, I don't want to give away too much because we'll talk about it, but I've adopted a more keto-friendly diet because of this book. I'm taking more ice-cold showers because of this book. I've tried infrared sauna because of this book, right? I am doing more strength training workouts because of this book instead of killing myself on the elliptical and treadmill all the time, right? So at the very least, you've helped me, but I know you're helping a lot of other people too. In fact, I just recommended it to a friend yesterday, and he bought it. So there, so it goes on. But David, I've been doing a lot of the talking. I want to hear more about your story. Let's start a little bit behind, or before the book. I don't know what Chargify is or Return Path. These were some of the other companies you started. If you could quickly kind of give us an overview of what those companies were.
Yeah, sure. So Chargify, we actually built within Grasshopper and then launched it out. So it was an internal team. The company provides recurring billing solutions for other people. So the same way we bill people on a monthly basis for the service, on the back end, we needed a way to manage all of those, the plans, the pricing, the promotions, the coupons, all the stuff that happens behind the scenes. So we built that internally and then launched a company. That company has done very well. We built that organization 100% remotely to about a 40-person organization, then sold it to a fund that I'm involved in that buys software as a service companies, and they've grown it pretty substantially since then, built an office in San Antonio. So that's been successful. Return Path, we actually launched in my high school year. So it was my senior year of high school, so before college, before Grasshopper. The concept was very simple. It was all around people change their email address, and companies at the time, that was the only way they had to contact you, right? So take like E-Trade, for example, right? You change your email address, they could lose you as a customer. So we created a process to fix that bad email address for them. Now the company provides all sorts of email management services, from spam assurance to inbox delivery to list cleaning. They've acquired a number of companies and then recently sold the company. So that's been very interesting. And then across that time too, I've had the fortune to invest in kind of probably about 80 to 100 different companies and seen and learned a lot along the way. And people always ask me, is angel investing a good way to make money? And my answer is absolutely not. I think across that portfolio, I've probably broken even, which I guess isn't horrible. But I really look at it much more as a learning opportunity, right? I've met a lot of great founders, but I've also learned a tremendous amount that I've been able to implement in my businesses from these founders over the period of years.
Well, and I bet you've helped a lot of these companies as well with your experiences and skills too. I would imagine that. So.
Yeah, I would hope so. I mean, my theory of investing has always been, I'll give you money, but if you ask me for help, I will come into your office and sit there for 3 weeks and help you if you ask for it. If you don't ask for help, I won't show up. Right.
Yeah.
So it's very much on the founder to make that decision.
Right.
And I'll be as engaged as someone wants.
Yeah, that's great. Now that you've worked with a lot of, startup companies, and so, the Ivanti family here, the Ivanti listeners, it is a lot of startups. We're kind of, that step before EO, where a lot of startups and medium-sized business entrepreneurs trying to get to that next level. What are some of the common characteristics of successful startup entrepreneurs that you see?
Yeah, I think the first one is just actions. So doing something, right? Even if it's a tiny step forward, lots of tiny steps forward get you in that direction and allow you to learn along the way, right? So at Grasshopper, we had no idea what telecom was, or besides using a cell phone, right? Like I didn't know how to do any of those things from a back end perspective. And we could have talked about it for a long time. Instead, we just started, right? Like we just started learning and started figuring it out. And the first thing we built was pretty crappy, right? Because we didn't really know. So I think that's one. Two is someone who really, sets out goals, right? So I know it sounds cheesy and people always say like write down goals or whatever. But when I look across a portfolio of companies, the founders that are the most successful are the ones that send a regular monthly or quarterly email. And to me, that just represents that they've set out some goals, they're communicating those to people, and then they're following up with results. Right. Yeah. And that characteristic across a portfolio has been very interesting to see.
Yeah. Well, it goes back to some of the stuff we learned, in the entrepreneurial master's program there, where create the vision and then reverse engineer it, right? And set up systems and metrics and all that stuff. Cameron Harrell talks about that all the time, reverse engineer it and talk about it every month, every week, every quarter, et cetera. Right. So no, that's great. And you're right. It's people like, whether it's a vision or a goal, you got to know where you're going, right? And then you got to know how you're going to get there, right? Like, so I have a goal personally. I want 200 Ivanti members in my Rochester chapter, right? And so I reverse engineer it. I know I need to make about at least 20 to 30 outreaches a day to prospects to make that happen in the next 3 months. So that's what I do, right? It's just practicing the foul shot, right? To keep on doing it, you're going to make it, right? So a certain amount of time. So that is excellent, and frankly, I don't know how you find the time to do this all. I mean, but I know that you are a master of maximizing every minute, testing and measuring, and I mean, you're a tech guy, but it seems like, and you even say this in the book, you're an OCD guy, right? I mean, you're really double checking everything, right?
Yeah, I mean, so like my dad, like I have some bad OCD tendencies, like how clean my desk is, and probably my family isn't all that happy with how I want the house clean and things like that. But yeah, I mean,
Yeah.
for me, it's all about processes and systems, and I think that's how we became so successful at Grasshopper, and had high productivity across teams. So small teams, very high productivity, a lot of revenue per employee in terms of a metric, right? And yeah, I mean, my OCD comes out in both positive and negative ways, as well as kind of my obsession, right? So as you saw in the book, right, like I went from no running to running the Boston Marathon, right? And I think that theme of kind of just overboard has been throughout everything I've done, both in business and in my personal life,
Yeah.
for good or for bad, right? And I tell people all the time, like, you don't have to do what I did. And my goal with the book was really to say, like, I wish this was available to me when I started my journey, to say, like, here are the most important things, not the most difficult things. You don't have to spend tremendous amounts of time. It might be hard things, but they're the smallest, easiest things with the highest return.
Yeah, but if those things were there for you, you would not have written the book for others, right?
Sure.
So part of your journey. So we appreciate that. So let's talk about the book, because this is really why I wanted you on my podcast. You have written a tremendous book, and when I sat next to you, I didn't really know you that well, but you talk about at the beginning of your book how you weren't happy with your self-image, with your weight, with who you were in many ways, and you were like frenetically trying all these different things to get where you wanted to be, and they weren't working, right? And so you were pounding the treadmill, pounding the elliptical, you were counting calories. Which at that time, like all the quote unquote experts were that's what you do. It didn't matter what you ate, just count the calories and cardio, right? And it wasn't working for you a little bit. Then you tried vegan, you tried a lot of different things, and you finally found what was working for you based on a lot of research of real facts about what our ancestors were doing to survive and be healthy back in the day. And it wasn't eating a bag of Lay's potato chips because they're only 200 calories and I can have 2,000 calories a day, so this is okay, right? So I'd love for you to, I know, and this is really what the whole book is about, but if you don't mind, tell us a little bit about our listeners about that journey, where you were, and some of the things that you did to start transforming your life. And I know you talked about all or nothing, and I totally want to hear about the yoga too, because talk about all or nothing. You thought yoga was this easy little workout before you tried it. And then after sweating buckets of water, you realize this is a real workout, right? And now you're doing it 5-6 days a week, right? So, so if you could somehow summarize where you were and some of the things you did to transform your life. And then, I totally want to talk about some of the specifics too, because they're really great. And they're things that people can start like today if they want to take some baby steps into changing their life.
Yeah. So, I mean, I think really what happened was there was a culmination of many years of frustration where I listened to all the experts, right? And the experts were very clear. It was, count calories, eat less, exercise more, eat a low fat, high carbohydrate diet, cut out red meat. So I did all of those things to an extreme, right? Because I'm like, well, if that's what you're supposed to do, let me do that, right? Yeah. So I cut out all those things. I cut out the red meat. I ate a very low fat diet. I counted calories. I went to the gym every day for at least an hour or two, right? And, burned calories, right? So counted both in and out, and got very little results. So I said, okay, well, clearly I'm not doing enough, right? And I think this is the normal reaction that so many have. Well, it's my issue, right? I'm eating too much. I'm not exercising enough. It's a self-control issue, all of these things. So I said, well, I'm going to do more of that, right? So I said, Chris Kaplan probably. He said to me, you should run the Boston Marathon. I think he said it jokingly because he assumed I couldn't do it. And then I trained with him through that winter and I ran the Boston Marathon. So I went from zero running to lots of running.
Right. All
just
or
to
nothing.
burn calories. Right.
Yep.
And then I said, okay, well, that seems to be working a little bit. I lost a little bit of weight, not very much, because I was still consuming a lot of calories. And I said, well, what's the next step? Well, obviously triathlons and Ironmans. So train for an Ironman. And I can remember, going to the Ironman and getting ready and being like, wow, like I'm putting on these pants. I've trained hundreds of hours and there's fat hanging over these spandex pants. Like there's something not working here.
Yeah.
I think that was kind of the ultimate frustration. So at that point, I really looked for like, how can I find the most extreme things, right? Like, I wish that I could say like I spent a lot of time researching. I did research after to confirm my thoughts and to figure out, am I doing something that's healthy or not? But like the frustration drove me to, how can I do something far to the extreme? And what's far to the extreme? It's either a vegan diet or a ketogenic diet, right? Those are kind of the furthest extremes from conventional wisdom.
Right.
And, so I tested both of them to find which one worked for me. And for me, it was a high fat diet. And that's still how I eat today. Although right now I'm on a 5-day fast, so I'm not eating at all.
5 days, no food.
So I'm testing this new fasting mimicking program. So it has a very small calorie intake of very specific foods. But yeah, I mean, it's to replicate full water fasting, but still having a small amount of calories so you can work out.
Well, what day are you on?
This is day 1. So
good.
I feel great. Like this is a normal day. Ask me tomorrow how I feel.
I'm glad I didn't, want to interview you in 4 more days, right? You'd have been like, Mamano, just shut up and get to the point, right? That's excellent. Well, I do know Chris Kaplan. He's a fellow Rochesterian originally. So, and he still does the crazy stuff, Ironmans, and that works for him, right? So,
although no, look, he's doing yoga now most of the time. I don't think he's training for Ironmans anymore. He's done a bunch of them, but he came here to Las Vegas and we did yoga together a few times, and he's gone back to Connecticut and now done yoga a bunch.
Yeah, I just had the keynote speaker of my Avanti conference. Her name is Cindy Weiss, and she's the founder of this place in Rochester that is now franchising called Breathe Yoga. And we started out with the deep breathing exercise to kick off the conference, right? Get our vagus nerve energized, right? And and also because of the book too, I forgot to mention this. I tried yoga for the first time.
Great. Yeah. I mean, for me, it was something that changed my perspective on a lot of things in life. Opened up a whole world of mindfulness and meditation, but also a great workout that is far easier on my body than running and hurting my knees and my back. It's actually improved all of those things compared to damage them. Yeah,
that's terrific. So, and I liked it too. And like you said, I did a little yoga at home with the P90X program, but I never really liked it that much. But when I did it at this Breathe Yoga place, I loved it. And one hell of a workout. I was sore the next day. So, that was good, right?
Exactly.
And I sweat buckets. I'm like, oh my goodness. So, so your book, Unstoppable, available on Amazon, 4 steps to transform. Now, I'm a little confused about the 4 steps because I just thought there was like 100 things in there, right? So what specifically are you identifying as the 4 steps? Is it diet, sleep, exercise? I mean, what are the four major things?
So the 4 steps are really the process in the framework, right? So that's identify, test, integrate, and then evolve, right? So those 4 steps in that framework, which quite honestly, I just stole from a continuous improvement or A/B testing framework, right? Like, create a hypothesis. If it works, you put it into your routine and you continue this process. But you did touch on the other important points, which are, outside of the book, giving you a framework, kind of busting some of these myths that we've been told about low fat or red meat or cholesterol and things like that. I really wanted to set out the major categories. Like the areas to be thinking about are diet or fuel. That's one. Sleep, exercise, mindfulness and meditation, supplementation. And then there's a bunch of others that kind of are miscellaneous, like kind of life optimizations, right? Like how do we optimize for happiness and things like that. But those are kind of the major categories. And then we can play in each one of those or play in multiple ones.
Yeah. Yeah, I agree. As I am the big 5-0 now. And I'll say I become more enlightened as well about, what to eat, what not to eat. And you're right. That's a big myth, especially in the 80s and 90s, right? The whole low fat, which, read the book about it. And there's some Netflix series about it, which what is behind it is money, right? Low fat, high sugar, but low fat. All right, that's a whole podcast episode right there. But at the end of the day, let's go back to our ancestors. What were some of the things that they were eating? And they, on a good day, they were having some meat because they had healthy fats, right? They were having a lot of vegetables. They were having some fruit in season, right? And so just getting back to those basics, and I remember in the '80s, the whole cholesterol thing, right? Everybody switched to margarine, and eggs are bad, and now margarine's terrible for you. And have some eggs, please, right? So
yeah,
it's like,
exactly.
let's just go back to looking back at what our great grandparents could have had, and let's start eating those things again, right?
Yeah, I mean, I think what's interesting is you look at the actual data, and obesity, heart disease, and diabetes have all increased significantly since the time we had the new diet recommendations, which is kind of the USDA, pyramid, and their kind of new fancy plate and whatever else. But ever since those were put in place around 50 years ago, we've seen an increase, and a very marked increase in all long-term disease. So clearly something's not working there, and we need to step back and say, look, we did this experiment. Maybe it wasn't the greatest idea to experiment on a whole population this way,
right?
But the data is pretty clear now. So let's correct it rather than doubling down on it, which I think is what is happening right now.
Yeah, we've never had more, gym memberships and access to healthy choices yet. Like you said, we're getting fatter, and
people listened, right? They were told to cut red meat. We cut red meat. What did we increase? We increased sugar, right? Yeah. So we see the curves very clearly. People were told to exercise more. Now it's a many $billion-a year business, gyms, right? If you look back 50, 60 years ago, you wouldn't pay to go to a gym. There was no such thing, right? People have listened, and they go. And we've seen the opposite result from what we expected.
Well, and you touch on that too, where behind it all is money, and in America has become a break and fix system, right? So we're gonna give you all this food and all this stuff, and you think you're getting healthy, and then you're gonna get sick, and then we're gonna come in and make some more money off the medical system to fix you, right? And so it becomes this cycle that we've given up to, right? Like, oh, okay, and then instead of like stop the insanity and being very instigative about what we're going to do and not break it, right?
Look at diabetes, right? Like, more people have diabetes in this country and most Western type diet countries than ever before. And I think the numbers are even higher when you look at pre-diabetes. So people that have the beginning stages of type 2 diabetes, where they have insulin resistance and all of the markers, right? And our solution is give people more insulin. Well, the body is telling us to do the opposite. Like, the reason that we have type 2 diabetes is because the body becomes insulin resistant. There's too much insulin too long in the body because we eat a constant stream of sugar and carbohydrates. So the body is saying, I need less, right? And we do the opposite and pump very expensive insulin into the body, saying, don't worry, you'll be fine. Take this insulin and this medication. Rather than saying, wait a second, like, let's just not eat the things that are causing this problem and let the body reset.
Right. Very good points. And how did you learn all about this? Did you do a lot of reading? Were there some documentaries you would recommend to learn more about it?
Yeah, I mean, I spent a lot of time reading. I think there's a lot of really interesting documentaries now that people can watch if they want kind of high-level understandings. But for me, I wanted to look at the actual medical data. So I looked at people like Volek and others that had studied this over the long period of time. What does low carbohydrate performance in athletes look like? What does it look for weight loss? So there's a number of people that have started to study this over a longer period of time. But yeah, I mean, there's some great documentaries on Netflix. Now, the problem is they compete with some of the vegan propaganda on Netflix, which becomes very popular because there's a lot of money behind it. And I think what people don't understand is the whole vegan kind of movement came from a very religious background. So it was not based in a concept of health or anything else. That's just how they've now kind of marketed it, right? But this came from a religious hospital and university, and that's where a lot of the funding and money continues to come from. And I have no problem with religion, but religion does not dictate optimal human diet, right? Like those are
Right.
two very different things.
Yeah, church and state and nutrition, right? So,
Yeah.
and so we talked about diet. We talk about exercise. We touched on that a little bit, and please read the book for more. But we were pounded with cardio. You think about all the exercise routines, the Jane Fonda workouts in the '80s and all that stuff, right? But yeah, we kept on getting fatter. And there's nothing wrong with cardio. I think it should be a piece of the pie. But don't forget things like yoga. Forget about things like weight training and strength training, right? And people, will put that as a very small percentage. And a lot of times cardio is 80, 90%. And how can you divvy up that pie a little bit more to be a little bit more well-rounded with that, right?
Yeah, I think that the first thing is just doing things you enjoy, right? So cardio to me is like, that's an excuse to be outside with family, walking around, doing something fun, not stuck in a gym on a treadmill, right?
Right. Yeah. Play tennis with your friends, right?
do something that's fun outside, right?
Yep.
And then, and then add other things in. Weight training is super important. I think yoga is a great option because it increases the heart rate. So a lot like, any type of high intensity interval training, yoga kind of does the same type of effects plus other things.
Yeah.
And when we look at the data, it's really interesting because one of the easiest markers to judge someone's age now is their ability to get in and out of a chair or a seated position without using their arms or their hands to do so. And that has very little to do with cardio. Right. That has to do with, using our muscles and strength training, as well as stretching and keeping our muscles limber. So there's a lot of other things involved that just cardio and burning calories doesn't accomplish.
Right. People say they don't have the time. You can always find the time. I forgot if you said it, or I also read a book by The Miracle Morning with Hal Elrod. And one of you said, and I have it on my phone, I'm looking at it, is there's an app called the 7-Minute Workout, right? And was that what it's called? 7-minute workout.
Yeah,
I believe. And I downloaded it, and 7 minutes and so I use it as a warm up because I do have time to do some other things as well. But it's even if I am in a rush, I could find 7 minutes to do something.
I love that. There's like a ton of those apps, all roughly based on the same concept on the app stores. And they're awesome. I use it all the time when I travel because you don't have to worry if the hotel has a gym or not, although I try to get one that has a gym. But in 7 minutes, all body weight type exercise. You don't need to have anything with you. You don't have to do anything special. You can do it in your hotel room. And it's 7 minutes. So there's no excuse. We probably wasted more time in our hotel room waking up and going down to get breakfast than 7 minutes. Right?
Sure. That's less than a snooze button. Right. So that's excellent. So, I could talk to you for hours, Dave, but the other thing I want to talk about is sleep because, especially as business people like ourselves, we are, there's still a lot of people saying it. We're trained that we don't need that much sleep. Just go. There'll be enough time to sleep when you're dead. There's people that I only need 3 hours. I only need 5 hours, right? And ultimately that, it's a fact. It catches up mentally, but physically, right? It makes you, it really causes disease. And you really get into sleep. It sounds like you did a lot of research and really looking into our natural biorhythm of best sleep takes place between 9 p.m. and 1 a.m., right? Those 4 hours. Yeah. And it's not like you could back that up or move it forward, I should say, and say, all right, well, instead of that, 11 to 3, right? It is 9 to 1. And basically that goes back to the sun, for our ancestors, they would kind of sleep when the sun set. They would start to go to sleep, right? And because they couldn't do much, they're not, looking at their phones or the tablets or TVs, right? It's like, it's dark, let's go to sleep. So it's in our, many, many years of our system. And how many people actually go to sleep at 9 o'clock? Not many people, right? So, and then just getting enough sleep to begin with. 8, 9 hours of just glorious deep sleep, right? And people put that aside and say, well, it's almost like a masculine, go thing. I don't need it. And even Dr. Oz, I know a lot of people think it's controversial. He actually says that sleep is the number one thing you can do for your health. The number one thing, right? So just quickly, tell us a little bit more about what you think of a good night's sleep.
Yeah, so I go to bed 9:30 actually. 10 o'clock is kind of my real cutoff, so I try to be in bed much earlier than that. Wake up naturally without an alarm clock around 6 a.m. or so, sometimes a little bit earlier.
Mm,
Never eat within 3 hours of bedtime. Body needs that energy to do restoration and repair and actually generate hormones and do all the things that it does during sleep compared to digestion, right? Also setting up our environment in our bedroom, making sure that there's low light, if any light at all. So trying to reduce light as much as possible, not watching television, playing games, or using our computer or our phones, right? Like the bedroom should be for sleeping.
yeah.
So setting up that environment the right way. And then during the day, there's other small optimizations, but like those are the big ones. And I think when you start to look at it, like I did all sorts of crazy testing, the sleep test with all the things on you and everything, right? And I think if you do the big hard things first, they're small changes, but they're difficult to do. You can then look at the other stuff like magnesium supplementation, and that's about like how do I get more deep sleep during the time I'm sleeping, right? But I would never skip to that and say, well, if you're sleeping 5 hours, get better deep sleep. Like, no,
Yeah.
get the right amount of sleep, go to bed early, then do the other optimizations, right?
Right.
And there's lots of stuff to be done there, and there's lots of fun things to test.
Yeah, and there are a lot of things that we're doing to contribute. You touched on it. The screen time before bed, right? Like I actually I plug in my iPhone to charge downstairs, right? So I can't get it unless I get up and go down, but I don't. The TV, I try to have it off. I don't want to watch it a couple hours before. I don't like TV anyway, but because it literally emits this blue light that tells your brain it's still light out, right? And they have a tough time. So what can you do to kind of like decompress, use the bedroom? And you said, actually in the book, you said two things. You said sleeping and we'll call it intimacy, right? So how about just those two things, right?
Yeah.
And another thing I've been doing since I read your book is, aren't you glad that I'm such a great student, right? Like you at least changed one life. So I am going upstairs around 9 o'clock. My kids are laughing at me because, they're staying up late. But I'm like, no, I'm going to bed around 9:30, right? And I fall asleep right away. And I wake up between 5 and 6 feeling great, and then my other favorite book I read recently is The Miracle Morning for Entrepreneurs.
Love it.
With Hal Elrod and Cameron Herold. So now I do my Miracle Morning routine as well. I do my savers, but now I can get up early enough to do all that, right? So
yeah.
Now, one thing you said that I thought I was doing well is a friend of mine, she works for a nutrition company, and she sent me some melatonin pills to help me sleep. And it's all melatonin, like no chemicals, no blah, blah, blah. And, so you don't wake up groggy. It's not addictive. And actually, I was taking them, and I've been sleeping better. But you said no to that because your body will stop producing melatonin because it's getting used to the pills, right? Is that right?
Yeah, so melatonin is actually a hormone. So it is natural, right? It's something our body produces. But just because it's natural doesn't mean it has an effect. The same as testosterone, right? Like that's natural. We can supplement with testosterone, but our body stops producing it, right? Like the body is a very smart machine. So as we intake melatonin, right? And it's okay over short periods of time, but over longer periods of time, the body says, wait a second, there's enough melatonin in the system. I'm going to stop creating it, right? We want the opposite to happen, right? We want to optimize how do we get the precursors for melatonin so our body creates more of it and we sleep longer and better, right? So one of the precursors is magnesium, specifically magnesium citrate. And that type of a supplementation is not something that the body naturally creates, right? And it's the precursor for melatonin. So I much prefer to take something like that if I'm looking to increase melatonin levels and increase deep sleep.
Right. Excellent. Well, David, I mean, we literally could talk for hours and hours, but I totally appreciate your time. I know you're busy. You're doing a tour around the country promoting the book and all the stuff you're doing with your companies, and you got a family. I mean, you got how many kids do you have? 3 or 4 kids, right? Three kids. Yeah, and their ages are what?
2.5, 6, and 15.
Wow, good for you. So that keeps you busy as well, right?
Yeah, we have problems all over the place.
Right. Opportunities, Dave. Opportunities. Yeah. Come on. Yeah. So David, before we leave, let's say there's a raving fan now. We've converted them into the Unstoppable Lifestyle and a David Hauser fan. First, buy the book, everybody. Buy the book on Amazon or buy the audio version, which is great too on Audible. I wish you read it. That's the only thing I'm going to say. I wish I was hearing your voice as I was listening to it, but maybe your next book. But if you want to reach out to you, people want to reach out to you and learn more, what are the best ways to connect with you?
Yeah, the easiest way is unstoppablebook.com. That has all the information about the book, link to Amazon, all that, but also my weekly newsletter that I try to send out every week.
Yeah.
I'm pretty consistent on that, actually. And kind of the 3 to 5 things I'm thinking about reading, doing, researching, watching.
Yeah.
That type of stuff has been pretty successful over the last 6 months. And I've been able to engage with a ton of people. So I suggest people sign up there.
Yeah, it's a great newsletter. I get it. And what's interesting is it's just text. It's very, very simple. It's like a letter, right?
Yeah.
There's no bells and whistles and fonts and colors and pictures. Was that very intentional? You just wanted something very simple?
Yeah, I mean, I wanted something that I would have read myself, right? And, I get a lot of email newsletters and they have all these like graphics and things in them and flashing images and all this stuff. And like, I think as we engage with real people, it's like I'm trying to make this a direct message. Like I write about very personal things that I'm going through or thinking about outside of these 3 bullets or 5 bullets, right? And I think that better represents it. Like it's just an email that I send.
Yeah, no, I read it, and because it's just very simple to read, And I've done some. I've watched some of the things you've recommended on Netflix. Inside Bill's Brain is the recent one. It's really about Bill Gates.
That's a good one.
Yeah, really, and that was because of you. I didn't hear about it until then. So, all right, David, I'm obviously a friend and a fan. Appreciate you. Glad you were born, and I wish you continued massive success.
Thanks for having me.
All right, thanks, David. And thank you, Avanti listeners. Always go to AvantiEntrepreneur.com. More episodes, resources, and you can get in touch with me. Have a great day, and stay awesome.